Forward to this. All right. I want to thank you, beautiful souls, for jumping on this evening. I'm super excited to bring Miss Tanya on. She is just a wonderful lady. I met her roughly 3 years ago, and we met through Trinont, the health and wellness company that I'm part of. And it was funny when we met, when we started deep diving a little bit further. She actually knows one of my BFFs and took training from, I think it was Kinga, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, took doing nails. So Tanya's been in the aesthetic industry for, I don't even know how many years you've been in.
37.
Wow, right? So she's like master nail lady, talented, all that. And she has recently decided to expand her knowledge and have another new passion too on top of I always say you're like my information guru when it comes to the health products too, because you're like an encyclopedia, right? If I have questions, I'm like, Tanya's got the answer. But you also now have ventured into personal coaching, right?
Hmm.
So, and it's more internal healing and that type of stuff, which I think, Auntie, you're gonna really have some good light on this. And I can't wait to even hear your feedback on it because I know that's something you're really passionate about too, helping people in that type of a way. So I absolutely love that. So welcome, Tanya. Thank you. And I cannot wait to learn more about what you do and share it with so many others because believe me, there are so many people that want this recording and it's gonna, yeah, I just can't wait to share it. So thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me on. I really appreciate it. It, I'm going to be blinking a lot because the smoke that we have in our area is just so bad, and I'm allergic to it in the beginning as I'm allergic to it as well. So it's just my eyes are burning, so they're going to water a little bit. So, yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. As as Tasha said, my name's Tanya, and for most people that know me from the beauty or aesthetics world industry, the nail industry. I think I met Kinga, I want to say probably a decade ago.
Don't age yourself, right?
We were at a nail trade show in the Saskatchewan area, um, taking an art class from a fellow educator. And so I've been educating for the last several years, but like you said, as of a year ago, I developed an allergy associated with the chemicals that I was around. So it kind of forced me to retire. So this was a natural transgression. So, like you said, I am a whole person wellness and transformation coach. The wellness comes from being really, really interested and passionate about the health part of it. And that's why I partnered with Trinont 3 years ago. And the whole person just asks is it's a dynamic that approaches your whole entire everything, like the spiritual, the emotional, the physical, the mental, all of that. So it's whole person. And I have been working with a mentor and an educator who's been training me for over a year, and she's phenomenal. So, but as you know, if you're in the beauty industry, if you're in the coaching industry, you know that that's what you do. You kind of, whether you're a hairdresser, a nail tech, or an esthetician, you kind of, that's what you do with your clients all day long anyway. I was also a former gymnastics coach, and I'm an Equine Canada coach, and I have worked with, um, I've worked with in the volunteer space with disabled kids and doing all kinds of volunteer work with psychology, mediation. I'm also an NVC facilitator, which is nonviolent communication. And that's a class or a course that I teach as well. So, but it wasn't always that way. I was I was born in Southern California, raised by a single mom, and through childhood trauma, I was forced to navigate various life challenges from a childhood marked by abuse and abandonment issues, frequent moves. We moved all the time. She was always moving across the US from California to Maryland to Virginia and Tennessee and Georgia, back to California. So my personal healing journey started in about 1992. I kind of hit an emotional wall. I was actually with my mom when that happened. And I realized that much of my motivation at that time, I was a single mom at that time to my oldest daughter. And I realized that my motivation, a lot of it came from people pleasing. And I was always people pleasing, trying to fit in, be accepted, wanting to be what other people expected me to be. And I didn't realize until I had gone through a lot of healing on my own that I was also struggling from physical health issues. And those physical health issues were tied to deeper wounds that I had not faced. So
Here you
that's
are.
kind of
Yeah.
where I got started. And after I had to retire from the nail industry, I just thought, you know what, I've been doing this and working on myself and working with other forms of healing over the years that just seemed like a natural transgression. So my passion is wanting to help other people heal from the inside out. Excuse me with this. So
That's awesome.
I believe that true success is in life comes from in whether it's relationships or your success in business or your family, whatever success, however that resonates with you, I believe that it starts with healing the parts of us that have never been seen, were never heard, and were not nurtured. I also believe that none of us are damaged goods. We're not broken. Sometimes we lose sight of who we are and who we were meant to be, and that just needs to be nurtured. So I'm going to touch on a few parts of kind of what I do. The first one is kind of like sometimes we overwork, we overperform, and the reason that we do that is because we're trying to prove something to the rest of the world. So we have wounds that we hide behind our hustle. So I don't know how many of you on here can relate, but if you're totally honest and you're willing to be vulnerable, could you admit or would you be willing to admit to yourself that you carry childhood wounds?
I would say that yeah, I think there's so many of us that do, right? And that's been part of my healing journey. And I didn't realize, through my life too, how much some of that has affected different parts of my life or how things have come about, right? So I can admit that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of us do, even some people that we see as high functioning adults, they often carry childhood traumas and wounds that they've never really fully processed.
Yeah. And I honestly believe too that there's a wide range of what that childhood trauma could be, right? And what I feel like is, one thing, someone else feels completely different on that too, right? So,
Absolutely. It can be anything from being emotionally neglected as a child or feeling like you're invisible or that you don't matter. I was actually when I was preparing my notes for this, I was actually thinking invisible. You remember that movie, The Princess Diaries? I don't know, maybe it was came out in like 2000, 2001, but The Princess Diaries, Anne Hathaway and Julie Andrews. And she wanted to be invisible. Anne Hathaway plays this little girl who's supposed to be the next heir to this country that she's never heard of, and she's invisible. She wants to be invisible. She doesn't want anybody to see her. And some those that can be a childhood wound. It can be having to be the responsible one or too early in life. If you've ever had an alcoholic parent or if you've had an absentee parent and you are the oldest and you have to take care of your siblings, you have to learn how to cook and clean and take care of the household because your parents aren't, or whatever that happens to be. It can be when you're put into that role that creates those wounds. Growing up in an abusive home or with somebody that has addictions, those can be also contribute to those wounds and those traumas. So those experiences, and what I call those experiences are abandonment wounding. Those are abandonment wounds, and it you can logically rationalize that, oh, my parents did the best they could, and they didn't really mean to abandon me, so they didn't really abandon me. But you have to be willing to acknowledge the fact that that did happen. And then you can heal from that because those do we carry those abandonment wounds into adulthood and into our relationships, into our leadership roles, and even how we handle stress and success through decades and decades down the road, it will affect us. So, um, I like to tell people that when you're starting this journey, you can never outperform your unhealed pain. You can hide behind it, you can try and overwork or overextend yourself, and you can work harder to try and avoid it and avoid feeling it, but you can't outperform it. And so that's where that healing begins. So the second part that I want to touch on is the inner work that we do that I do with my clients. And part of this comes from our inner critic. I don't know if you've ever heard that term or what I coin it. I learned this in a seminar that I took, which is a phenomenal seminar, but it's called ANTS. And ANTS is an acronym that's automatic negative thoughts.
Never heard of it. Okay.
So it's our internal voice, and all of us have it. Um, a lot of it can be critical, it can be doubting, it can be fearful. I'm sure that you guys could give me a couple of examples of what your internal dialogue is like and your automatic negative thoughts.
Right. Well, I know even what Anne even just posted in the chat before that was, I think a lot of people too feel that way, not even just with childhood trauma, but even in every day that they're not good enough, right? Like that's a very negative thing to say to yourself. But there's so many people on a daily basis that tell themselves that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I can remember and they all start somewhere. Those automatic negative thoughts and those self-criticisms and that inner voice, they all start somewhere. I know that for me, I can just share my example really quick. I know where mine started. Mine started when I was I know I started being abused when I was 3, but my automatic negative thought came when I was about 6. And I was in kindergarten and my mom was going on a trip. And I can remember laying on the top bunk of our bunk bed, mine and my sister's. And my sister was going to go with my mom on this trip she had to make. And I was supposed to be, I had to stay home because I had school. And she was going to leave me with my dad. And my dad was going to have my grandparents babysit me while he was at work, but I had to stay with my dad. And unfortunately, my grandfather had started abusing me at 3. So I didn't want to go. I didn't want to stay home with my dad. I wanted to go on this trip. I so badly, and I was crying and asking and begging and pleading that I could go with her on this trip. And I know that she was doing the best that she could. She thought that I needed to stay in school. Later, she has since, through our healing journey, has apologized for that. She said, "How much school could you have had when or lost out on when you're like in kindergarten, right?" So she has apologized for that, but that's where my not enough love has to be earned. I'm not worthy. I'm not, my sister's more important than me. You know, that I don't matter, is the big ant. I don't matter. That's the big one that plays. And I have carried that with me through decades and decades and generations. And it affects us all. I mean, all of our those old replayed programs we carry with us.
And I don't,
So,
and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that like you don't even really have to have childhood trauma. Like some people are like, no, I had a great childhood, but you still have those inner,
mhm,
right? and or situations through your childhood that you made you feel that way, and then you've carried that on later on in life, right? So, and like I really feel like a lot of this has to play of like how we are in the workforce or with our businesses or um just treating others or that sort of thing too, right?
Exactly. You're spot on. We are, and we do, we act out of these beliefs without even realizing it. They are so automatic and programmed that we don't even realize that we say them half the time. And there's so many tools that I like to teach my clients that I have learned over the years, and some of them through seminar. And one of them is what we fear we create. So the things that we focus on that we fear the most is what we usually create, whether it's in relationships or work, or the self-sabotaging stuff that we do. So this is where the mindset work begins, and we can work through this to be, and it can become life-changing. It's not just about the positive thinking, but it's also about reclaiming the truth of who you are, and underneath that programming and that conditioning. And we all have those automatic thoughts, and we all have some sorts of trauma. It can be maybe it didn't come from your parents, but it could become from a bully on a playground.
Hmm.
You're a little girl in grade 1, you go to the playground and you're climbing on the monkey bars, and somebody tells you that the dress that you have is super, super ugly. What's the first thing that you think? You got to, and then you want to go and you dress differently. You want to be somebody other than who you are because you want to fit in. You want to be accepted. You want to be, so they can start as early as, tiny, tiny.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think people even experience that in workforce, even in their adult age, right? Like I've I've said to my, my oldest son, like there was that time, preteen and there's stages of where he was going through some things and and he would say, I can't wait till I grow up and I don't have to deal with this. I'm like, well, honey, I am sorry, but the earlier in life that you learn to deal with like some of
mhm.
these things, the easier it's going to be because I feel like it follows, right? And it is sad that even in our child or our adulthood, like I said, workforce, different things like that, like, there is that. Or we're like, oh, how do I actually look? Oh, I can't go to that meeting today. I look like I got bags under my eyes. I look horrible and I look frumpy. I can't write. Like we do it all the time. Yeah.
Why is the aesthetics industry and the gym memberships and the weight loss industry such a huge, huge billion-trillion-dollar industry? Because everybody wants to fit in. They want to be accepted. They have that longing for connection somewhere. So part of my inner healing work, I am a Christian and I'm a woman of faith. I am a faith-driven coach. I fully admit that. Some people, like for me, it's God. For somebody else, it might be the universe or source or whatever resonates with you. But I will often bring that into my one-on-one coaching sessions and tell people that for me, a huge impact in this is also, as Christians, who God says that we are and how he defines us. And sometimes that can help um, shift that inner dialogue and that inner thinking as I work with clients too. So the inner child work is reconnecting. That we do is reconnect with your inner child at the age that they were wounded, and then learn to reparent that inner child. If you can picture yourself as a 5-year old or wherever that initial wound started, and learn to nurture that child and give that child the emotional connection and the healing that they needed at that time that they didn't get, emotional validation, um, and helping them see you can reparent them, you can nurture them at that age. And so we heal the different stages of your inner child, so that where the abandonment started, so that you can have healing in that area. Um, and then some of the other inner work that we do is we're learning about self-sabotage and why you self-sabotage. I don't know if you've ever had anybody in your life that has gotten to a certain stage in success or gotten to a certain point in a relationship. And you might even recognize this when you deal with people that are going through divorces. This is my third divorce, or this is my second divorce, or, they get to a certain stage and then all of a sudden success feels unsafe. So they self-sabotage unconsciously, not even realizing why, because they're bringing all of that stuff with them and they don't even know why, because sometimes it feels unsafe. So we rewrite our self-talk as well. And like you were talking about, when you go into leadership, when you go into work, when you go into your relationships, the person that you spend the most time with on this planet from birth on is who? Yourself.
Ta-da! Right? Yeah.
Yes. And how you speak to yourself is lasting. And so, like, if we had like a group here, I was gonna ask people, and those of you that are watching the recording, I would ask you to get curious about what's the last thing that you said to yourself. What's the last
And
thing that,
be honest.
and be
Be
honest.
honest with yourself
Yeah.
about that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Be be curious about what was the last thing that you spoke to yourself, and was it loving? Was it kind? Was it nurturing? Or did you go, ah, Tanya, you dork, you screwed that up again? Because I will often ask clients, especially ones that are really, really hard on themselves, and their self-dialogue and their self-talk is, if you spoke to your best friend
Hmm.
the way that you speak to yourself, how long do you think that they would hang around and be your friend?
I love that because it's so true.
Mhm.
And let that sink in, right? And I really feel like it takes a lot of work to not do that, right? To not talk to ourselves that way because it becomes a habit. And I think it becomes a habit at a very young age. Um,
It's
and
part
again,
of
like
those
I,
ants.
yeah, yeah. So I got a question. So
Mhm.
like, so you work more one-on-one, right? Because then you can dive deeper into what that person is going through. Is that correct? Or is
I
group
do.
settings too,
Mhm.
like for your type of coaching, is that also like quite effective?
Group coaching, but I don't normally have any more than six in the group. If I'm doing like a 12-week program with a group of ladies or a group of, I mean, I say people because I do coach men as well, but I don't like to have more than six. And that is because we do get raw, we do get vulnerable, we do share. And I want them to have a close knit enough group that they can feel safe enough to be vulnerable in that group. So we cap it off at six, but I do once a week coaching with them as well. So they get a one-on-one call with me during that 12-week program once a week. They can also get with me, ask any questions if they have anything that's come up for them that they want to discuss with me in person. But then we also, and then I also do one-on-one as well. So I do that.
And so, I guess for people that are watching this later too, what I guess if there's some key things, I don't know, that they could take away or imply, would you have some key tips that you could share that they could take away? Like, I'm guessing one of them would be what you just asked. Would you talk to your best friend that way? Right. So to really watch how you talk to yourself, like to me, that would be a huge thing to start practicing on a day-to-day basis. And because I was told too, like it takes like 30 days to make something a habit, right?
It's 21 days to
Okay.
create a new habit.
Okay.
And it can, or you can, a consecutive 9 weeks builds it even better. And what happens is when you've programmed your mind and you've programmed those neural pathways get really, really deep. And so it's easy. It's like having a bowling ball go down the gutter. And every time you roll it down the gutter, if you were to keep rolling it, the gutter would get deeper and deeper. It's really hard to roll it down the center and try and create a new a new groove. You'd have to start rolling it down the center to, a lot of times in order to try and create that new groove. And that's what we have to do with our brains. We have to create that new neural pathway. And in order to do that, we have to do consistency and do connect things over and over and over again. And that repetition will help. And the last thing that I wanted to touch on was there's a book out there called the there's a book, it's a really, really great book. What's it called? It's called The Body Keeps the Score.
Oh, and she knows this one.
Yeah.
Is it on audiobooks?
I believe you could get it on Audible.
I'm like obsessed with audiobooks. I'm a
So,
horrible reader. I mean, I shouldn't say no, that was bad talk to myself. I
mhm,
do not take the time to sit and actually physically read a book.
mhm,
So I'm way more successful if I have an audiobook and listen to it.
yeah. And you can definitely do that. A lot of people do. Some people will do the audio and then read it along with them as well. But yeah, it's called The Body Keeps the Score. And basically, the third point that I wanted to talk on is what I also do is in the health and wellness space is create you know this as because I go down rabbit holes and I'm such a nerd when it comes to knowledge and understanding how the body works. But our emotional pain that we've suppressed over years, it actually doesn't just live in our minds. It actually lives in our bodies. And suppressed trauma and suppressed emotion, it affects our digestion. It affects our mood. It affects our inflammatory system. Everything is connected. Chronic stress and trauma can disrupt our microbiome in our gut. It can disrupt our sleep, our hormones, our immune system, everything. And if you think of an infant or a baby, I'm assuming that you're a parent too, Anne. When a baby is born, infants they don't repress anything. They're free to be authentically themselves. They're connected to their bodies. So when they are in distress or if they're unhappy, they cry. And if they're happy, then they're joyful and they're cooing and they're laughing. They don't repress anything. What happens over time is when their emotions are suppressed, then that starts to create that trauma. If you and you guys could you probably identify that if you've ever had a gut feeling like a gut instinct or a gut feeling that you wanted to say no but you didn't and you ignored your gut feeling and you regretted it later, what happens?
Most times you beat yourself up about that. No, I do, right? Like, oh, you should have, right? I mean, that's where my brain goes. Yep.
And I think everybody has, but it's when we start to suppress those emotions because we don't feel safe expressing them. And when we grow up in families where there is either trauma or stress, and then we start to face a dilemma. I can either be myself and I can have my feelings and I can have my anger or my frustration and my happy and or I can be attached and be accepted, but I can't have both. And as an example, like if you had a little boy or a little girl that wanted a cookie before supper time, and you as a parent are saying, no, you can't have a cookie before supper. It's not good for you. You have to eat your supper. And then they throw this little fit. If you tell them, smarten up. You don't need that cookie. Go to your room until you're going to stop crying. And then when you're ready to be reasonable, you can come back out. That dismisses that child's behavior. It dismisses their feelings. It doesn't validate them. And they learn that my feelings aren't safe. Whereas it's our part as a parent that if their feelings make us uncomfortable, we need to sit with why. Is their feeling making us uncomfortable? So when we can learn to, and so that can lead into,
A whole
that
thing.
leads into all kinds of suffering, all kinds of problems, both physical and mental. And when I know when you were touching about different acts of trauma and different things, when I say trauma, I don't mean like something horrible and
Mhm.
horrific that's happened to a child. Trauma can be as little as the good things not happening for kids. It can be um, not feeling accepted. It can be not being validated, not being celebrated just for being a kid and being there, having your emotions heard and listened to and understood when they're not. It's like, I can understand that you're frustrated you don't get this cookie before supper, and I can completely understand with you. I'd be mad too, but you know what? As your mom, I know what's best for you, and I love that you're expressing your emotions and that you're feeling that, and it's okay. You'll get it after supper. That kind of so that they feel validated. So we don't want to shut the kids down, but that's what ends up happening. And then that creates that separation from ourselves. And that in essence is trauma. And so I like to work with the supplements and the nutrition as well to work with the long-term effects of also what's going on inside. So
Love it. Very
that is kind of a snippet of what I do.
Yeah.
Inner childhood, abandonment, wounding, healing, working with the body, not just for our autoimmune diseases and all of the other things that happen because of suppressed emotion and trauma, but also what's going on in our minds and helping you through that. So we can take a much deeper dive down the road if you're interested. I can share more with you, but um,
Yeah, and I honestly think like I really wanted you to just give some little tidbits
mhm,
to because I personally feel like when I was asking a little bit of what you do and learning all about your new venture, um like I said, I was curious. I wanted to hear tidbits, and I also really felt like it is so important to get the word out because I feel like so many people deal with this and they either, are like, oh, my problems aren't that big, or it's really not that like they make it, I don't know. I would negative way of me saying this, and they make excuses for their feelings or that sort of thing. And they try and justify it, but they don't actually deal with it and they don't actually feel like it's okay to deal with it or that there's so many other people going through it. And like I said, I agree with you that it affects our gut. I am 100% someone that deals with gut issues, and I know that it has a lot of different avenues that has taken me to figure out to help my guts. Yes, I'm on some amazing supplements, but that was a really, really long journey for me to get to this point, and it also was realization of so many things to get here. So that's what I want to share with everybody is that you're not the only one going through this and that there is lots of other, you know, people out there and support. And, I love that you're doing little workshops and that sort of thing. Because, like I said, I wasn't quite sure if it was just one on one or group. So that's really good to know. So I think even, people could bring this into like, their teams or different smaller work groups and stuff like that too. I think that you could probably bring a lot of value there. And I also want to say too, if anybody that is watching this or watching the recording, if you have certain questions, I think it would be really good to send that. And then maybe we could build another training off of some of, because I feel like your range is like super huge that things could be covered on. And obviously, we don't want to talk for hours and bore everybody. But right. So I really think that send your questions. And like Tanya said, you can deep dive that much further into it. And I think that this is super awesome. And I really want to thank you for sharing. And I am super excited to learn more. And like I said, you kind of really hit a spot for me because it was actually like a couple of months ago, someone said to me, because I think it's habit when your kid's crying, what do you say? Stop crying. I'm going to say there's like every parent has said that. I'm just gonna, right? And when someone made me look at it from the other angle, like, then you're making them feel not validated. Like, no, okay, why are you crying?
mhm.
What can we do? Like it's just, and it's work. It's work to train your brain that way. So I love that you shared that little tidbit too, because I have to remind myself that every single day as a mama, especially with a busy 4-year-old, because let me tell you, he tests my patience. And I'm always like,
When
so
you think of the fact that we were born for connection, we
yes.
were actually born physiologically for connection. And when we don't have that connection, then we act out or we learn to cope and we survive. And addiction is part of that survival mechanism. How do I solve this problem? How do I get relief? How do I deal with these problems and this discomfort that I don't want to feel because it's not safe to feel feelings. So I have to suppress them. If we can just ask ourselves to get curious about why. And if somebody else's feelings are evoking an emotion in me and I'm uncomfortable with what they're feeling, I need to sit and ask myself, not like, why are you feeling this way, but get curious about why is it affecting me that way? Why am I impacted? And why is this emotion that they're having evoking this emotion in me? And why am I having a hard time with it? And with children, if you could just validate them and help them work through it, why are they crying? What is the emotion and what is the reason? Then you can help them work through it a whole lot easier. And then you have that connection.
Okay, I love it. Okay, send us your questions. I know Tanya, like I said, she's my information guru lady, and she actually just she loves because sometimes I'm like, I'm sorry for another question. She loves this type of stuff. So send questions, and I cannot wait to deep dive a little bit further. And thank you so much for taking the time to come on, and thank you, Anne, for joining us. I really appreciate that, and I hope you ladies have a fabulous evening.
Thank you for having me. Have a great
Yes.
evening.
Okay. Bye.
Hey, bye.